Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks so much for coming back to this course, The Principal Paths of Buddhism. So I wanted to say, I just wanted to follow up on Rachel's question from last time about the distinction between uh, tok and tok, between whether that word, that Tibetan word tok, which means um, one way you spell it, it means realization, and the other way you spell it, it means thought. And then what the distinction is between those two things. And we, I mean, I have not had this experience myself, um, but it's like the difference between us talking about and thinking about and meditating on what emptiness is, what the lack of a self nature is. Um, Even having good understanding and applying that in our lives, and having a direct perception of emptiness. That would be the realization of it. And it's that direct experience that has the power to affect our mind in ways that will lead us inexorably, without fail, to get out of suffering. Thinking about it, understanding it, is very good, and that does have some power. If we understand it perfectly, it has the power to keep us from being reborn in uh, the lower realms of suffering existence. So I hope that helps make it a little more clear.
Yes, thank you, teacher.
Sure. Um, so your meditation assignment for the past couple of days was to contemplate renunciation, right? And I hope that's going well. Um, this object of meditation, renunciation, um, thinking over uh, reasons for uh, reasons for why this life that we're stuck in, if you're who you appear to be to me, to be in this suffering realm in samsara, to think about how it's suffering. And we have to consider the question, is this life really so bad? I've got a home I can live in, I've got food to eat, I've got money in my pocket, I can be generous with others, others are generous with me, seems pretty good. Unless live in Ukraine. Things are pretty, oh no, unless you live in Gaza. Oh no, wait, no, sorry. Um, Things are not good everywhere. But even the things that we think are good, are they really good? They bring us suffering because they end. Um, so it really is worth our precious time to consider how this life is suffering. If we realize, if we attain these three principal paths, if we have these realizations, we can stop our suffering. We can stop with we can stop everyone's suffering. And we're talking big time, right? We're talking having to be reborn over and over and over. We're talking about having to age in every instant from the moment of conception. We're talking about having to get sick. And we're talking about having to die. We can stop all those things. So I think it's worth our while to do these studies. And we can help others stop these things too. So just for you who are interested in the Tibetan language, here are those words for birth is Ke, aging is Ga, sickness is Na, and death is Chi. So we are going to jump into doing a little bit of using some logic today. And we're going to do something that's called Mushi Musum. So if you can say Mushi Musum. Great. Shi means four. Sum means three. And then mu means permutation. So what we're going to look at is between two objects, and it can be any two objects that we can think of. Are there three possible permutations or four? So, for example, let's take the color blue and the sky. If we think about these two things, blue and sky, are there three possible permutations or four? And when we talk about permutations, what we mean is that are there instances of there being blue, or I should say sky, and not blue, between blue and not sky, both sky and blue, and neither sky nor blue? So are there things that are not sky and not blue? That's the last one. When we use this example, we think about sky as we normally think about sky, which is that we have a blue sky on this planet. So is there this first permutation this first mu, which is there sky, something that is sky and not blue. So given what I just said, we would say no. Because the sky on our planet, except in the middle of the night, is blue. Or except when it's stormy or, like that. But normally when we think about sky, it's blue. Is there something that is blue and not sky? Pretty easy to say yes on this one, right? The sky is not the only thing that's blue. Except on my desk, there's no example. So I can't hold that up. But An's shirt is blue. There we go. An's shirt is blue. Oh, and so is Tui's. Did you guys coordinate? Okay, the third permutation. Is there something that is both sky and blue? Again, pretty easy because we said the sky is blue. Okay. Now the fourth permutation, is there something that's not sky and that's not blue? Yes, lots of things. Trees have normally brown trunks, for example. So now between any two objects, we can do this exercise. And the way it is in our world, in our experience, is that there are either 4 permutations or there's 3. And we can say that about any 2 things. And you can, think about this after class. Pick 2 things and go through the list and just come to understand that that's the way they are. If you are like a computer programmer or something like that, you probably know this already. It's just logic. So Mushi Musum is just a way for us to understand the 2 things, understand better the 2 things we're looking at. So blue sky, we didn't need too much help with that. I think we all as kids get to learn that the sky is blue. But let's say we wanted to look at virtue and a cause for Buddhahood. Yewa, virtue, and a cause for Buddhahood. Are there 3 permutations or 4? I'm not going to do the clapping thing because I think with Zoom, it might make Zoom kind of angry. So we won't do that. But normally you do in debate, you do the clap. So the way you would start this debate is you would say, Gewa, Dang, Ju is cause. Is there, no, you would say, Mushi Musum Mebecher. There's neither, Mebecher means there isn't because there isn't. So you would just start by saying, you start a debate by saying a wrong statement, and you try and elicit a correct statement out of your discussion, out of your logical discussion. So I just said, oh, there are no 3 or 4 permutations of virtue and a cause for Buddhahood. So we're wanting to understand something about virtue and causes for Buddhahood. So our first one is something, there is something which is virtue and not a cause for Buddhahood. So can anyone think about an example of something that would be virtue, but not a cause for Buddhahood? Actually, let's start with the third one. So we've got 4 possibilities, right? A but not B, B but not A, both A and B, and neither A nor B. So let's start with the third one then. Can you give me an example of something that is both a virtue and a cause for Buddhahood? Something that is a good deed, plants a good seed, and is a cause for Buddhahood. I'm getting some great things here. Teaching Dharma, sharing wisdom, a good deed with bodhicitta and wisdom, the combo, a wisdom seed, doing a good deed with 3 principal paths in mind, helping poor people, meditation. Someone gave us the right answer, or the answer that will show us what is a cause for Buddhahood, and all these other things which are admirable and very positive are not necessarily causes for Buddhahood. Can anyone give me a guess besides the person who wrote it there, what that might be? If you can see the chat. Maybe you don't understand English, in which case I apologize. Oh, tantric practice was added. Methods and intelligence. 6 perfections. That's another good one. Well, does anyone remember the book that we're studying? What the topic of that book is? Lamso Namsum, right? The 3 principal paths, which are not roads we take to Buddhahood. They are realizations in our mind. um, with these three realizations in our mind, any positive thing we do will be a cause for Buddhahood. But we need these three paths. We need renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view or wisdom. So the renunciation part is the part that that was missing from most people's responses. And we do kind of take that one, I don't know, it's like very exciting when we move on to think about the wish to become fully enlightened for the benefit of all living beings. You know, I want to jump to that, or I want to jump to wisdom. I want to jump to understanding what it means that things don't have a nature of existing from their own side. Yeah, I get it. Life is suffering. Okay, fine. But I dare say that's just a toke without an S. That's just a thought. And it could be a high thought of understanding. Like the foundation of these three paths really is renunciation. We must see that our life is filled with suffering. We can't help anybody trying to get them out of suffering if we don't see ourselves what suffering is. That it's suffering to have a house that keeps me from the elements. That is a suffering. It's constantly breaking down, and I constantly have to fix it, and I constantly have to think about it and repair things, and it's really a bother, to be honest. It would be nice to not have that sort of bother. So suffering doesn't mean in all instances of it that it's something that causes you incredible physical or mental pain or anguish, right? It's anything that just like interrupts your calmness, your peace of mind. That's a suffering. So I did sort of jump to the punchline um, with doing number 3. There are things, of course, that um, well, let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about things that are uh, virtue, that are not a cause for Buddhahood. So it would be that same list, except for those of you who wrote Lamso Namsun. Any good deed that's not done from a state of mind that has realized renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view. So, uh, teaching and serving the sick or feeding the hungry, these are all very powerful, good things. But if there's no lamso namsu, if there's no three principal paths, they're not a cause for Buddhahood. And that's okay if you don't want to reach Buddhahood. That's fine. They're good things. They help people. But imagine being a fully enlightened being. Imagine having a heart so full of love and compassion for everyone you meet. Imagine being able to see what other people see, to experience what other people are experiencing. And because of your immense, intense love and compassion for them, you know how to help them. You know the thing to say. You know that they may appear to you to be just hungry or just confused about some point, or just angry at some situation or hurt about something. But you know what's really going on in their experience. Really, I say lightly, you know what they're thinking about their experience. You know how to help them. You can help them. Whereas me, someone who's not enlightened, someone just showed up on my screen as a bunny. I hope you're getting this little bunny. Um, uh, that's okay. You don't have to turn that off. It makes me laugh. Okay. So for me, not being an enlightened being, I can only do my best, right? I can only help in the way that it appears to me to be helpful for other people. So yeah, I want to get these three paths. I want to get the realization of renunciation and bodhicitta and correct view, so that I'm basically, on a low level, I'm not wasting my time. But on a much higher level, I will be able to actually help people. Okay. So the other two, if is there something that's a cause for Buddhahood, uh, that is not virtue? No way, says Rach. I agree. No way, right? It doesn't make sense. If and if you haven't studied a lot, that's things will come. This is the first course of many, but the way the laws of karma are, um, if you they're related, they're consistent. They have integrity in that if you do a virtuous thing, you will have a virtuous result. You will have an experience in the future that is pleasant. if you do a harmful thing, you will experience in the future some sort of painful or harmed result. It may appear to us to be that scoundrels are presidents of countries, or people who steal are incredibly wealthy. But their position as leader of a country, or their experience of having immense wealth, doesn't come from their current actions. Karma takes time to ripen. And I do feel for these people who have incredible wealth and only want more and only take more from people because of what they're going to experience in the future, which will be really devastating poverty. So yeah, there's nothing that's not a virtue, but a cause for Buddhahood. And then the last one, is there something which is not a virtue, which is not a cause for Buddhahood? Yeah, again, impossible, right? I mean, even if I have lamso namsum, even if I wipe a tear from my eye, it can be a cause for Buddhahood. With those three paths in my mind, and with correct view, understanding that the tear in my eye comes from some experience that I had in the past, and that it has no existence from its own side, and that it's really impossible for me to wipe a tear from my eye. That the whole action of wiping a tear from my eye is empty of any inherent existence. So anything a person with lamso namsam does is a cause for Buddhahood, is a virtue. I know some of you are scowling a little bit. Would a person with lamso namsam go out and steal from people, go out and chop people's legs off at the knees, go around stomping on every bug they saw on the sidewalk? Does someone who has realized renunciation, who in every moment of their life understands that everything is suffering, and with correct view understands where that suffering comes from, what the cause of that suffering is, and with every breath has love for everyone else, and has a burning desire to become enlightened in order to benefit people. No. Gosh, these are three cool paths, don't you think? Don't you want them? I mean, it life would be life would be so pleasant. Like, what could disturb your mind if you had these three realizations? Like, no matter what happened, that's okay. I'm, how can I help? Well, I hope you're excited about it. You probably already all have all three, and you're just being very patient with me uh, as I talk about them. Someone asked Grace, how about listener and self-made Buddha? I don't understand what is the question? What about them? Oh, do they? So we were just talking about virtue and a cause for Buddhahood. So what that, if there are things, mm, it's a really good question. And this is something that we will get into far more deeply in other courses about basically the question is there one path, and by this I mean vehicle, uh, to enlightenment, or are there three? And that it is a debate between different philosophical ideas, different Buddhist philosophical systems. And we're not going to get into that in this course. So when there's a question like that, for me anyway, in my practice, I like to write them down somewhere. So I have a little book of questions that come up in my mind as I'm learning these things. And I just put them in that book and say, I'm going to go to that again in the future and look to see if I can find an answer. Look to see if I can find someone who will help me understand the answer to my question. So I don't just drop it. I don't just say, no answer, forget about it. Must not be important. Um, no, the question came up for a reason. And so you can look for it later. But thank you. I don't know if the tech team sees that there's no translation into Ukrainian. I think that's what that says. UKR no translate. I may misunderstand the statement. I may have to put that in my notebook. But no, it seems like if there's not translation, then I deeply apologize. So next we're going to talk about, let's see. Oh, let me just say briefly that, I have a huge long list of Tibetan words and phrases here that I did not use in this discussion of Mushi Musum. And so what I've done is I've gone through the transcript of when Geshe Michael taught the course. And he used a lot of Tibetan. And I wanted to preserve that Tibetan because it's not written down anywhere else, anywhere. So I wanted to write it down and get the Tibetan there. So I've told you what he said, but I didn't point out in the Tibetan. Okay. So don't worry too much when you see that I'm jumping ahead a page and a half to go to the next word. Okay. You're getting it all. Okay. Now we're all okay with Ukrainian language. Yay. So next we're going to talk about I oops, I put my Zoom window over my document so I couldn't see it. There we go. We're going to talk about Chakya Chempo. Say Chakya Chempo. Chakya Chempo. And the Sanskrit, it's one of the questions on your homework. So Chakya, we'll get to the Sanskrit. Chakya means seal. And Chempo, we had a Chen the other day. I don't know if anyone remembers. But it means great or big. So in Sanskrit, Chempo is Maha. Maha, great. Like Mahatma Gandhi, if any of you are familiar with him from India. Maha, great. Atma, man, great man. Mahatma Gandhi. And Chakya, seal, or it could also be, it can be many different things. It's one of those Tibetan words that has like 10 meanings, and you have to understand the context of the usage of the word before you can get its equivalence in another language. Generally and mostly, Geshe Michael translates it as seal, like not like a seal, the animal in the ocean, not like that kind of seal, but the kind of seal that I don't know, it used to be a thing when I was a child, where if I sent a letter and I put a seal on the back, like a drop of wax, and then I had a little metal piece that I could push down on the wax, and that would seal the envelope, so that when my grandmother got a letter from me, she knew that no one had opened it along the way. Um, we don't need Chakya so much using emails or texts, which is kind of sad, right? Because sometimes we get a text from someone and it's actually, it could be it's not them. But anyway, I digress. So uh, the Sanskrit word for Chakya, so seal, but it could also be a gesture, like you may see when people do the offering the mandala prayer, that this is a mudra. This holding hands like this is a mudra in Sanskrit. So that's a Chakya. So together, Chakya Chempo is Mahamudra. And basically, Geshe Michael was just asking you to remember this word Mahamudra. And you don't have to explain more than that. But what Mahamudra is it's a very high practice. You can think about it as like the direct perception of emptiness. It's a different meditation than that. But I think, and I have not practiced Mahamudra very much, a little bit. In our particular lineage, we don't do this particular practice so much. But the little I have done, I can see how it might be possible to equate those two. Mahamudra with the direct perception of emptiness. But let's, for our purposes. Oh, did someone say something? For our purposes, we're going to consider Mahamudra as a tantric practice. It's a great high diamond way practice. And we're going to also look at a little more closely what is Mahamudra, and is it possible to practice Mahamudra without Lamso Namsum, without the three principal paths? So basically, we know that, okay, in our first discussion, if we want to reach Buddhahood, we need Lamso Namsum. So now we're going to look and see, can we say the same thing about tantric practice? Do we need Lamso Namsum? Is it possible to practice Tantra without these three principal paths? it it is not possible because Tantra is a Dribui Tekpa, which means it's a result vehicle. Tantra is secret not because it holds secrets inside and you need us, you know, you have to be part of the club in order to practice Tantra because it's secret. Although we do not talk about it if we are practicing it, it's secret because you have to have planted the seeds for that practice to ripen in your life. Yes, the diamond way is a very, it's a very powerful and fast vehicle to full enlightenment. So yes, if we see all the suffering around us, we don't want to wait 3 countless eons in order to help all living beings. We want to get there as quickly as possible. But we can't just sit down and start practicing tantric practices without having the 3 principal paths in our mind. In fact, that's why anyone is able to practice any tantric practice, is because those 3 principal paths are in their mind. Now, can anyone say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go practice Mahamudra. I'm going to go get instruction and I'm going to practice the Great Seal. It won't work. You can, I mean, it may be a sort of a good ripening that you even hear about Mahamudra, or even that someone teaches you Mahamudra. But if you don't have those 3, renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view, the practice will not function as a diamond way vehicle for you. If we focus on the 3 principal paths, basically is what Geshe Michael is saying. If we focus on developing renunciation, having a realization of renunciation, which is thinking day and night, that this is all suffering, without bodhicitta, thinking day and night, that I want to reach the highest possible state so that I can be of benefit to people, without thinking day and night with every movement, every breath, every thought with correct view. Tantra can't come to us. Tantra won't be successful. So we need these 3 paths to practice Tantra as well. Sorry, I'm going through my notes here, and there was a lot of a lot of people, when Geshe Michael taught the class, um, who were very interested in details of what deities were and so on and so forth. But I think we don't need to discuss what a deity is to understand the point. Uh, that I mean, some of you probably know that Geshe Michael's going to start teaching the Diamond Way in in Kyoto before too long. And so to make that experience as powerful as possible for you, um, really spend some good meditation time on this course and work on your renunciation and bodhicitta and correct view. Let's see. Where did my, oh, there it is. So now we're going to talk about top and shera. Top means method or way, and shera is wisdom. Top K, you may have heard this phrase before, is skillful means. And that is skillfully using a method to achieve some end. It could be to help someone understand something, or it could be to get someone to do something for you, which is, less virtuous activity. So skillful means doesn't necessarily have to be a positive thing. But like someone introduced to me this method of in trying to understand how it is that that the human mind is really sort of obsessed with making objects. Like it really is obsessed with understanding. It's not just 2-year-olds, walking around like, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? Our minds are constantly doing that, constantly, because we're just taking in visual and auditory information. But our minds are making like, oh, that's a car. Oh, that was a horn. Oh, that's a tree. If our minds are constantly doing this. And the skillful means that I was exposed to like, in a way, slow this down so I could look at it, was someone came up to me with a bag with something in it, and I had no idea what it was. And I had to reach my hand in the bag, and the purpose was not to figure out what's in the bag, but to watch my mind as it tried to figure out what was in the bag. Feeling, is it hard? Is it soft? Is it sharp? Is it cold? Is it hot? I to watch all that. And so that gave me a much deeper understanding or experience of how my mind is constantly creating objects. So that's a That's a tapke. That's an example of a tapke or skillful means. And then sherab is like yeshe. They are different words, wisdom, but we're not going to get into that. It's just for us to talk about wisdom. And wisdom is what wisdom is the understanding of the nature of reality. You could say that it's wisdom that holds, well, we'll get into it. But these two, method and wisdom, they're sometimes called the two wings of the bird of Buddhism, that to practice the path of the Buddha's teachings, we need both method and wisdom. So you could say that they are the two causes of becoming a Buddha, through method and wisdom. So now we've already talked about how lamso namsam is the cause for Buddhahood, right? If we can't do any virtue without lamso namsam and have it be a cause for Buddhahood. So how do we relate method and wisdom with the three principal paths, which were, again, renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view? So for wisdom, what would you say is the path related to wisdom? Renunciation, bodhicitta, correct view. Thank you, Laura. Correct view. Yang Dakpe Tawa, if you remember in the Tibetan. There are different parts of correct view. It's not just about emptiness. It's also having a correct understanding about how things appear, how karma functions, the positive, not in terms of good or bad, but the positive experiences we have, where they come from, how does that work? Having a correct view about that as well. The highest one is having a correct view about the nature of existence of things, that things don't have a self-nature. So then with method, with top, which is that renunciation, bodhicitta, yang dakpe tawa, correct view. Do we have any ideas? Oh, Rach is putting in 2. Rach has taken this course before, I can tell. Or she's already realized this course and it came to her. So, right, it's not that we have lamso nams ni, which is 2. It's not that we have 2 principal paths. We have 3. And the 3 fit into the 2. Primarily, when we think about method, we think about which one? we think about bodhicitta because bodhisattvas, they have all of these activities that they do. They have the 6 perfections, which someone mentioned earlier, where they're doing all these activities to help other beings. They do it with wisdom, certainly, so that's included as well. But primarily, we think of method as bodhicitta. So we could think about Ngenjung as method, but let's look at that a little more closely. Ngenjung is so thinking day and night that this life is suffering. This samsaric life is suffering. Does that sound very active? Like are there it's not as active as bodhicitta, right? Bodhicitta, you're out in the world helping people. You're being generous. You're being patient with other people. So actually, renunciation is preliminary to bodhicitta. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, that how can we think about the suffering of others if we don't get our own suffering, if we don't understand or realize our own suffering, if we don't want to get out of suffering ourselves, how can we help? How can we even generate the idea to help others get out of suffering? Right? It would just be us being nice, like helping someone cross the street or carrying their groceries for them, or, So, Ngenjung, or renunciation, is the preliminary to method. So that's where we start. That's why we start. That's why your first meditations are about renunciation. It's where we must all start. Now we're going to talk about we're going to talk about chuku and suku. And these are the 2 bodies of a Buddha. Chu, I think we talked about this last time. Chu can mean either dharma, or it can mean thing. When we're talking about ku, or the body, this is honorific, an honorific word. So we only use ku when we're talking about either a Buddha or a highly realized being. You may have heard the word tulku before. That's someone who is able to direct their birth. They're not enlightened yet, but they can direct their birth, where they want to be, with whom, what mother do they want. They can choose that mother. Anyway, so in this case, when we're talking about a ku, a body of a Buddha, when we use chu, it means dharma. So this is called the dharma body. And then suku is suk is form, physical form. So here we're talking about the physical body of a Buddha. So normally when we talk about, like, even just human beings, we talk about body and mind, right? Body and mind. There are different ways we can talk about the body and mind of a Buddha. We can talk about them in terms of being two, like we just did, body and mind. We can talk about them in terms of being three, or we can talk about them in terms of being four. When we talk about them in terms of being three, we divide the Dharma body. The Sanskrit word is Dharmakaya, you may have heard, into the omniscience of a Buddha and the emptiness of a Buddha's mind. The wisdom in the Buddha's mind, the emptiness of the Buddha's mind. When we divide into four, we also divide the physical body of a Buddha into two. So there's a body of the Buddha that is in the Buddha's paradise. When a person becomes enlightened, boom, there's their paradise. They've created a paradise in which they live, and they're surrounded by bodhisattvas, and they're all constantly chatting about dharma, but their bodies are sitting in this heaven, and that's called the Sambhogakaya in Sanskrit, which you don't need to remember, but you may have heard that word before. And then there is the Nirmanakaya in Sanskrit. There's the body that, if ordinary beings have the seeds to see a Buddha, that's the body that is seen by ordinary beings. Ordinary beings meaning those beings who have not yet seen emptiness directly. And I can think we can even go more generally and say those beings who are still in this suffering realm. The story is that the Buddha was born to the wife of a king, and then went through all these processes and experiences and meditations and reached enlightenment. And it's almost, it's like a play put on for our benefit. But we created that play with our seeds, created that play and created that Buddha. If we were there in the room, like I don't know, I'm not 2,500 years old, so I was not in the room. I was not on the planet when the Buddha was there, so I don't have the seeds for the Nirmanakaya, for the Buddhist body in this world. I have the seeds for stories about it, and that's cool. Thank goodness, right? For me, anyway. Thank goodness. All right. So, uh, sorry, the people in his class had a huge long discussion about whether or not there are actually four bodies running around. And we let's see, does he talk about it in the course foundation courses? I can't remember. He did some teachings, Geshe Michael did some teachings in Tucson before Diamond Mountain started on Maitreya's book about it's called Uttara Tantra. But that book gets into big discussion about what does it mean to be a Buddha, like what's going on, what are their bodies like, what are their paradises like, and all that sort of thing. So that's a great course for that. So we're not going to get into like those kind of details here. We're just going to talk about the thing you get to memorize for the next class is the dedication prayer. And in that dedication prayer, we talk about Geshe Kitsok and Sunam Kitsok. So Geshe, that's wisdom. And Sok just means collection. So we're talking about the collection of wisdom. And Sunam Kitsok. Sunam is merit. So the collection of merit. And we're talking about that, may we build up this collection of wisdom and merit in order to reach enlightenment. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get the important part. So when we talk about Geshe Kitsok is pretty clear, right? The collection of wisdom is clear that would be related to correct view, related to the wisdom side of the bird, of the two wings of getting to Buddhahood. The merit side is doing good deeds, doing virtue, to build up this collection of positive seeds, powerful positive seeds, to push us into enlightenment. And that would be related to bodhicitta, which of course requires renunciation in order for us to have that. we first have renunciation. So these two collections are very much related to method and wisdom, which we just covered. The last thing I need to speak about quickly is about Shedrips and Nyundrips. Shedrips, that means an obstacle. Well, She is short for Sherab, which is wisdom. So it's an obstacle in this usage of wisdom to omniscience. It's an obstacle to Buddhahood because a Buddha has omniscience and wisdom. So drip is obstacle. And Yun drip, Yun is related to Nyomong, a word you may have heard, which is negative emotions. And so this is Nyun drips are obstacles to nirvana. So those are two types of obstacles. So again, related to these two types of obstacles is Lamso Namsum, are the three principal paths. And they relate in the way that we have spoken of them before. And hopefully that's clear. I just also wanted to point out that the Zhang in Zhangchu, which is Buddha, right? Buddhahood, sorry. And the Sang in Sangye, which is Buddha. Zhang and Sang, those are both about words that mean clearing or cleaning, having cleared, having cleaned. And what they have cleaned, what has been cleaned, are shadrips, obstacles to Buddhahood, and yundrips, obstacles to nirvana. We need to remove the obstacles to nirvana because that is like on the way. Everyone, before someone becomes a Buddha, they have reached nirvana. Like that's a step along the path. Reaching nirvana, being clear of all negative emotions, is something that occurs before one becomes a fully enlightened being. And let me see if I've covered this properly for. Yes, okay. Now we have 6 minutes for questions, if there are any. Oh, what's the difference between Gewa and Sunam? The difference between Gewa is virtue and Sunam is merit. I think they're very close. they can basically be used, at least for our purposes here, they can be used as meaning the same thing. But we do use two different words, so that may be a question you add to your notebook and see if it gets answered in a later course. Okay. Any other questions? How to meditate on suffering. Um, so what you can do for this course here is to maybe even, like, I like having a little notebook that you carry around, like periodically throughout the day. Think about, am I feeling any sort of discomfort or outright pain, mental pain or physical pain? Just watch your experiences to see. Like even just moving in my chair. Like I'm inspired to move in my chair because if I'm watching closely, I notice, oh, I had a little like discomfort in my lower back. And I was just moving to stretch that out. So that discomfort goes away. But gosh, if I think about it, if I sit up like this, it's not going to be too much longer before I'm going to have to move again. Because the body just is going to be uncomfortable. I mean, even when we sleep, we're moving around all the time, trying to find comfort, which we never find for more than a very short period of time. So that is suffering, that it doesn't last. So, like that, thinking about recalling your own experiences and thinking about how you feel discomfort, like how it is that a drive for feeling comfortable or getting rid of some discomfort or even just annoyance, right? Like there could be a fly in the room and you do that. Like it's a slight annoyance, but it's disturbing your peace of mind. It happens like all the time. So just look like that at your experiences. And method is activities, the things we do to accomplish our goal. And if our goal is to reach enlightenment, our method is the bodhisattva path, right? And within the path are the six perfections, which is a nice, lovely collection of activities that bodhisattvas do. There's also a book called, I think it's the 64 activities of a bodhisattva. I think it's 64 or 46. I can't remember. I think by, is it Aryadeva? But anyway, there's all these things that bodhisattvas do. So that's how we're talking about method, as opposed to wisdom, which is something that you do with your mind, right? Or your understandings and your realizations. And then Nenjung is the thing that sparks, the thing that is necessary to spark bodhicitta. or the wish to become enlightened, to benefit all beings. So there I've reached time, and I want to thank you all for, again, your interest in this course, and thank you for coming back. Please continue. I hope to see you again next week. Have a wonderful week. And really have fun thinking about suffering, really, because you need it, okay, to understand it, so we can go on and do our methods. Okay, thank you so much. Love you all.
Thank you, teacher.